Welcome Wargamers, this is Doug with 2 Plus Stuff, and today we're talking all about Arkhan the Black, Mortarch of the Sacrament. We're going to take a look at his lore in the old world, as well as bring him into the Age of Sigmar and see what he's doing now. As always, ending our discussion with why this character stands out as being so important and frankly so cool in the storyline. Now, as always, when I cover old world lore, it's important to mention that it has not actually been made like non-canon by GW, but it is behind them. They don't reference it a whole lot. A lot of it has kind of been turned into, there's a myth surrounding him that blank happened, when if you read the old world lore, this is clearly what happened to him, right? So you have to kind of roll with it. This is the best that I could come together. There's a lot of lore concerning Arkhan, and I've condensed it a lot, glossed over some things to give you a general feel of his history, rather than a detailed blow by blow, because frankly that would take a very long time for lore that we're not even really 100% certain is still canon. So, digging into that, what do we know about Arkhan the Black in the old world? Well, actually, he was born around the time of Nagash. Their ages are not too far apart, relatively speaking. And Arkhan was a minor noble in a wealthy house. Remember, this is the old, what we used to know as tomb kings. This is the kind of Egyptian thing, and so there's a lot of dynasties and monarchies and royal houses and things like that. Well, Arkhan's family was one of the minor ones, but he was a well-to-do guy. That being said, he was kind of a creep. He was a criminal, petty crimes mostly, but also a gambler, just not a great guy. They called him the Black because of his bad dental hygiene. One of his favorite snacks was a certain root that you could chew on, and it turned his teeth dark black. Now, about this same time, Nagash, who was asserting himself as top of the priesthood and kind of vying for control of all of the sort of Tomb King-ish worlds, was in his kind of ascendancy, really inventing necromancy as it was. Now, if you want to learn more about Nagash, all of these stories of the Mortarchs and stuff, they're all so tightly interwoven with Nagash. Go ahead and click on the videos I just released, catching you up on him. To put it simply, Nagash is inventing/experimenting with necromancy, and he starts hiring Arkhan to bring him test subjects. And frankly, at this point in his life, remember, these guys are all just healthy, normal humans. Doing this sounds like a great deal. He's a petty criminal. He doesn't have a whole lot going for him. And he's kind of seedy enough to be able to get bodies and or people who are unwanted / can go missing without raising a fuss. He knows kind of the seedy underground because of his gambling connections. He's a great person to have in the field, kind of doing the dirty work for Nagash. And it's also important to know that because he is part of a royal family, he's not a nobody. And so having kind of the control of some of the lower houses would be important if Nagash was to seize control of sort of the empire from his brother, which did end up happening. Because when Nagash seized control, becoming the absolute king, we would say the pharaoh, if you will, of the Tomb King kind of world, he made Arkhan his right-hand man. And in this time, Arkhan began to learn the art of necromancy for himself. Right at a certain point of stealing and kidnapping test subjects for Nagash's experiments, he's not a dim-witted guy by any stretch. He starts to learn what is making these things happen and becomes quite adept at it himself. In fact, he's the first person to take Nagash's Elixir of Life. This is the kind of potion, if you will, that Nagash invented through necromancy to keep the soul tied to the body. So the body will decay over time, but you're still you. You become what's like really what we would know in modern fantasy as a lich. And this is what makes him so different from Neferata or Manfred. They are soulblight, they're vampires. He's something different, and that has to do with his origin story with Nagash. He took the actual Elixir of Life, and when we talk about Neferata, we're going to talk about what the differences between Arkhan and Neferata are. They had very, very close origin stories in terms of timeline, and so there's a big difference between them, so we're going to talk about that with Neferata. Following back with the Nagash story, the people and the priests and other cities revolt against Nagash. There's a big final showdown, and Arkhan gives his life to buy Nagash time to escape. Not long after, Nagash is in one of his campaigns. He's going back for power. We covered in the first Nagash story, the lore story, that he kind of was struck down multiple times. And one of those times he resurrected Arkhan again to have as his kind of servant, his main right-hand man. And that's kind of what brings him forward into the end times, where Arkhan is instrumental in bringing back Nagash. They kind of just keep resurrecting the same characters back and forth. When they're alive, they have very intriguing stories, but that's kind of the way it is with some of these guys. And that really concludes his old world lore. Like I said, very condensed version of it. There are some great books that contain him in the kind of chronicle, old world lore. But fundamentally, the important things to walk away with are he was kind of a scoundrel that got taken in by Nagash, elevated to a high position, being a good right-hand man who can get things done, taught the art of necromancy, became the second best person at using it just below Nagash, was one of the first people to take the Elixir of Life, becoming a Lich, and he's just so loyal and thankful, really, to Nagash for all that he's done for him. But where is he now? Those are things that we could have learned from a while, but with the Legions of Nagash book coming out, I want to know what Arkhan is up to right now. Well, he continues to be the absolute most loyal servant of Nagash. In fact, Nagash elevated him to being what's called the Mortarch of the Sacrament, which we'll talk about what that means here in a little bit. But to put it simply, he's one of the 3 Mortarchs who Nagash uses to enact his will upon the Realm of Death. He still functions as Nagash's right-hand man, but his role seems to be more directed towards kingdom building. He knows more of Nagash's plan than anyone else. Keep in mind, that's not really saying much. And what we get from the various lore portions that include Nagash talking to Arkhan is that Nagash wants to reconstruct the Black Pyramids. These are big kind of nexuses of death magic. They funnel death energy to Nagash, kind of giving, they're almost like batteries, I suppose you would say, but really charging and kind of overloading his abilities. And he has tasked Arkhan to reclaim all the Realmstone required for that construction. In their kind of dialogue back and forth in one section of Legions of Nagash, Arkhan just simply states it's going to take a very, very long time to have enough Realmstone to build this thing. But Nagash, who plays the long game, says, "Go ahead, well, you better start now." And so that's exactly the mentality they both have, being so ancient. And so Arkhan, uses his willpower to raise all these dead and has them in these big lines just going out, getting Realmstone, coming back towards the center of the realm. Legions of Nagash definitely doubles down on the idea that he is the number 2 necromancer in existence, second only to Nagash. And while Nagash was struck down by Arkhan and needed time to rest, he was really the one who managed all of the defenses for Nagash while he was healing. We saw this in the book Nagash, Undying King, where Arkhan was really the main focal point of saying, I think Chaos are coming to this gate that leads straight to Nagash's chamber. We need to set up a mounted defense, give Nagash time. He was the one who was really communicating with Nagash, kind of orchestrating the events in that story to keep his lord safe. And now that Nagash is back online, kind of reasserting his power, the first act he had was to retake his capital city, which is Nagashazar. And to do that, he set Arkhan up as the one who's going to kind of oversee the reconstruction with all the endless troops that Arkhan can manage at the same time. And the last little bit lore-wise that we get that kind of adds to him is that he is the leader of what's called the Black Disciples. Now, what this is a coven of necromancers that are tasked with doing Nagash's will. People who exert death magic themselves in order to please Nagash, the god of death. So it's him and like a unspecified number of necromancers that he teaches directly. There are his students, his disciples, that go out and just do whatever Nagash wants. Whether it's someone's in charge of construction, he'll manage, resurrect and keep managing all these skeletons that move and build edifices and repair things. Everything from obviously waging war. Whatever needs to be done, Arkhan does it through necromancy himself and also his coven, the Black Disciples. So let's talk about why Arkhan the Black is such a cool and unique character in the lore. I think that's really kind of the crux of why these lore segments are so intriguing, is that there's something so refreshing and unique about each and every one of them. Well, for starters, I love the fact that Arkhan is as old as Nagash, because time is unique. It gives you perspective. These gods and also their followers, they have a unique perspective because they play the long game. They're not going anywhere, right? And I think that really changes your perspective on war and death and losing things and gaining things. It just kind of tempers any kind of excitement or depression that you might feel, because it's just going to keep going, right? What is time to an immortal being? In the book Nagash, Undying King, there was a really interesting discussion, I believe it was Neferata who had it, where they said that each of the Mortarchs really emphasizes a different characteristic of Nagash himself. Arkhan was really singled out as being the one who defines Nagash's unwavering will and devotion. Now, of course, Nagash is only devoted to himself, but that takes its form in someone who worships him, not just does what he wants to do, but wants to do his will, right? He is a servant, not just a slave. I love this idea that each of the Mortarks represent something, and we're going to harp on that as we explore the other two this week. And it's easy to see why he views Nagash not just as, a lord and a person that's above him, but also as a deity to be worshipped, right? Nagash saw potential in him, saved him from a life of petty crime and just wasted potential energy, gave him purpose and power, and all he asks is that you do my will. We all can understand why someone would be not just obligated to do what they say, but also super grateful when you think about all the people who have died, and Arkhan's not one of them. He gets to keep living, keep becoming more powerful, and just serving Nagash. Which really is unique amongst the Mortarks because he has much more of a religious connotation towards Nagash than the other two. Neferata and Manfreda will explore don't view Nagash as a religious leader, but Arkhan really kind of does. In fact, I said we were going to explore this, Mortark of the Sacrament. If you're not familiar with the word sacrament, it's used frequently in religious ceremonies. A sacrament is an outward sign of an inward exchange or experience, right? Communion, baptism, they don't necessarily physically change anything about you, but they're a symbolic action of an inward change that happened in your life. Well, Nagash's will and power are everything that he is, and necromancy is the expression of that faith. He leads, teaches, and oversees this expression of faith in others, in the Black Disciples, disciples being another word with a very religious connotation to it. And if you read the book Nagash, Undying King, you really do get a sense that there are people who genuinely view Nagash as sole deity, while others just see him as one of the pantheon, right? He's just like Hades, as we would know Hades in the real world. One of many gods, without any particular bearing on my current actions. And so this kind of devotion / faint religiousness to it really sets Arkhan the Black apart, first from other Mortarks, but also think about how many other armies besides Death really have these kind of trio, or even sometimes a single person who really embodies everything that their deity is about. Not all of them have it. And so it's really, really cool when we see a character in particular who has been with their god for so long, has this unique religious slant to them, and does these amazing, wonderful, horrific, destructive, depending on what side of the coin you're on, things for the sake of worship and devotion, not just servitude. And I think that is really awesome. And those are the things I could really think of that make Arkhan such an amazingly cool character. And folks, that is what I know about Arkhan the Black and why he is such a cool character. And if you have an Age of Sigmar lore question you like answered, go ahead, click subscribe, leave it in the comments down below. I read every single comment and I try to respond to as many as I possibly can. But I do use all of them as inspiration for my future videos. This week we're going to be taking a good, hard look at the Legions of Nagash, the Death Army itself. This has been a release that a lot of us have been excited for. So if you want to support the channel and show any kind of gratitude at all, please go ahead and share this video with a friend. Bring them here, kind of introduce the channel. We have a fantastic community here of great people answering each other's questions in the comments and just being really, really encouraging. And if you'd like to support the channel in a more personal way, head on over to the 2+ Tough store down in the show notes. And on sale right now, I have a gaming mat set in the Realm of Death. It was just kind of a one-off print thing. We did 100 of them, and so what I'm trying to do is just sell them off. We thought we were going to get in the mat business, and it's just not something we're interested in right now. So check them out. They're wonderful for gaming in the Realm of Death for the Malign Portents campaign coming up. Check them out. You won't be disappointed. And if you can't do that, that is perfectly fine. I am just so glad you spent some time with me here today, and I look forward to seeing you in my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.